Hi, this is Penny Calloway, and I'm presenting philosophical and theoretical perspectives for advanced nursing practice, which is our textbook edited by Cody. I'm part of Group 1, so we're presenting Part 2, Conceptualizations of Human Beings, Health, Environment, and Nursing Practices. And we have 11 chapters to cover. I'll be covering the first 3, which is Chapter 8, Chapter 9, and Chapter 10, starting with an introduction to Part 2. It's a reflection of the role of the people and experiences in advanced nursing practices. Then Chapter 8 is Nursing, the Ontology of the Discipline. It's by Reed. As an introduction to Chapter 8, its purpose is to clarify the ontology of the discipline of nursing, extend the meanings of the term of nursing, and propose a substantive definition. And so Reed, as a review, ontology is the study of being, becoming, existence, or reality, what things are, describing their relationships. Reed suggests that we include in the dialogue about the ontology of nursing, that we include the process of well-being. Reed posits that the nature of the nursing process includes complexity, and integration, and well-being is part of the process, but also is an outcome. She suggests that in doing this, we need to challenge the status quo, we need to deconstruct nursing and then reconstruct it. And in this expanded definition of nursing that includes well-being, well-being should be part of the meta-paradigm of nursing. And to do this, we will need to push against the frontier, the boundaries of what nursing is and what it can be, and ultimately this will advance the practice of nursing. In Chapter 9, it's entitled Philosophical Position on Nature of Human Beings, Foundational to Orum's Self-Care Deficit Nursing Theory. This is by Banfield, and the purpose of this chapter is to explain why the foundations of a theory need to be very explicit and clear. And the author states that Orum's self-care deficit nursing theory does not have clear foundations stated. As a review, the self-care deficit nursing theory is involves the human requirements of persons for nursing and the processes required for the production of nursing. And included in Orum's theory is this concept of the nature of the human. So the philosophical foundation is not clearly stated according to this author, and she proposes that we use a process called the philosophical inquiry process to determine what the philosophical foundations are when a theory is not explicit. And this philosophical inquiry process involves 6 phases. It's critical reading and examination and identification of each statement in the inquiry question. So identifying each statement is the first step. Then examining and analyzing each statement. Then examining and analyzing the work of the authors that are cited in the formation of the statement. Comparing the work of those authors to the current work, and constructing answers to your inquiry questions, and examining your findings to determine the validity. And she uses this philosophical inquiry process to delve down into one of the concepts in Orum's theory, which is the nature of human beings. And she determines that by using this philosophical inquiry process, that moderate realism is the philosophical foundation underpinning this concept in Orum's theory. And this was determined by the way that Orum talks about the nature of reality in this concept. And it reflects moderate realism because she describes the nature of reality in a way that is consistent with moderate realism, in that reality exists separate from whether the knower, and reality exists independent of that, and the world and reality exist in and of themselves. She also describes the human as unitary beings, not made up of separate parts, but one unitary being. She talks about the human and the effect that they have on the environment and vice versa, that it's a fluid relationship. She discusses the ongoing developmental processes in humans, that's a dynamic process. She discusses that humans possess essential humanness in that they have a free will, they have intellectual capabilities, they exhibit human love, they have other aspects of essential humanness, such as appreciating beauty, bonding with one another, seeking understanding, seeking God, and these are aspects of essential humanness that were discovered in using this philosophical inquiry process, and it's consistent with moderate realism. So in conclusion, philosophical assumptions and beliefs aren't clearly articulated always, but by using the philosophical inquiry process, you can determine what those foundations are. And in the self-care deficit nursing theory, it was determined that the underlying philosophy was moderate realism. Could have been missed if it's not looked at carefully, but it's critical to discover that, as it affects one of her, or actually several of her key points, which are the 5 views, Orum's 5 views of human beings. She states that human beings exist in the fullness of humanity. They are persons who can bring about change. They are persons who attach meaning to things and communicate through language. They grow and develop according to biological characteristics. And there are certain situations in which the person is unable to protect themselves from outside forces. These are Orum's 5 views of human beings that are consistent with her philosophical foundation of moderate realism. Moving on to Chapter 10, Reframing Outcomes, Enhancing Personhood, by Boykin and Schonhofer. So, reframing outcomes. The purpose of this chapter is to reconceptualize the idea of outcomes as what we traditionally think of them, and instead thinking of enhancing personhood as the outcome, which can be shown through unity, wholeness, and intention. Traditional outcomes, it's a popular concept. We think of measurable data points like economic results and end products, but they suggest that enhancing personhood is a better way of determining the outcome of nursing. And they use caring as nursing theory, which is actually their theory, and the way that it uses enhancing personhood as an outcome, as an example of a way to do this. Of course, it's not necessarily measurable because enhancing personhood is really immeasurable. So, there are 4 assumptions in their theory, which is nursing as caring, and the 4 assumptions are that to be a human is caring, that personhood is a process of living in caring, the capacity of personhood can be nurtured in relationships with caring others, and persons are whole in the moment but growing from moment to moment. So the focus of the nursing as caring theory is that nurturing persons should be done from the understanding that they are living, caring in the moment, and growing in caring from moment to moment. And this can be done by acknowledging, affirming, and celebrating people who are caring and people who are growing. Then this process is manifested. The outcomes of enhancing personhood are manifested by these characteristics. Relationships are exhibited by listening and communicating in a way that gives of the self. Reflective practices, which is sensitivity to cues, signs, and hunches, and reflections on the meaning of those. Intention, which is a practice that's not concerned as much with a diagnosis, but with a mutual relationship. Outcomes, which are different than traditional outcomes in that they're not probabilistic, they're unpredictable because they involve relationships. Transformation is another manifestation, and this is exhibited through discovery and explication of knowledge and meaning. And then knowledge, which occurs every moment, ever transforming and ever being transformed. It's important to state that these outcomes are not necessarily measurable. However, they can be discovered through observation, reflection, and dialogue. They give as an example a nursing situation where nurses are teaching infant CPR to some migrant workers. And the outcome of the situation is the migrant workers ended up sharing who they were and about their families with the nurses. The nurses relinquished fear related to cultural and language barriers. And there were positive outcomes involving enhanced personhood from those who were nursed, those who were involved in the nursing, and also the healthcare entity for which they were working. So the conclusion that these authors come to is that there is widespread acknowledgement of nursing as quality, not necessarily quantity, which will increase future possibilities for nurses. And nurses, advanced practice nurses, are uniquely positioned to be able to articulate these values. Thank you.